Okay, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We are going to continue reading the Sefer Yemei Shmuel, which is the autobiography of Rabbi Shmuel Horowitz, Zichron Livracha, who was a very, very big Breslover Chassid. I think this is the 8th video we are doing. We are up to Perek Chafei. We are 25 chapters into the book. This is the book. We only did like that much. And that's in 8 videos. So this is probably going to be like 1,000 video series. But who cares, because we're just reading and it's awesome. And soon we're going to get to some really cool information. I mean, all the information here is awesome, but anyway. So the last video we finished off, we were talking about how it was in Tzfat during World War I. And there was a lot of, a lot of tsaros. There was a lot of troubles for the Jews living there from the Turkish army, and there was famine and all this stuff. So Rabbi Shmuel Horowitz continues, and he's talking about the famine. And he's saying that, so he says that at the beginning of the war, when the famine was the worst, and we didn't have any food at all, so they told my father that the consulates, the Russian consulate and the English consulate that were in the city of Beirut in Lebanon. In those days, Jews could travel to Beirut in Lebanon. Today, it's not that simple. They were giving help to, their people who were citizens. And Rabbi Shmuel Horowitz's family originally was from Russia. So they told my father, go to Beirut, to the consulate, to the Russian consulate, and, get some food for us and get some help. And my father had no choice, really. But Rabbi Shmuel Horowitz says that I was a little kid, and I was very scared for my father. This could be the last time I'm like ever going to see him. So I told my father to not go, but it did not help. And so Rabbi Shmuel Horowitz decided that he was going to try a different approach. That he was going to daven a lot at Chatzos Laila, which is a very auspicious time to pray at midnight. And that my father should, return safely. And I cried a lot. And the only, hold on a second. What is he saying over here? And he was talking about how when his father went, he went to a certain person who had all different types of candles, and he bought candles and oil and all these different types of things so that he could so that he would have light every night to pray at Chatzos, because there was no electricity back then still. And I had my Svarim, I'd say for Shari Tzion and other books to say at the night. And because I believed, he says that I would continue this until my father comes back. And every night I would wake up by Chatzos, and I would wake up my 2 little brothers, and we would say Tikkun Chatzos by the mezuzah on the floor, and we would put dirt on our foreheads, and we would say Tikkun Chatzos, V'Tikkun HaNefesh, V'Shar Bakoshes, and other supplications, and we would learn until the morning, and then we would go daven V'Sikin, and I would say Perek Shira, Tehillim, and the Imam Adis. So we see that Rabbi Shmuel Horowitz, even when he was a little kid, he was already doing big things. And after a short while, my father came back safely, with a small security that he would get support for a certain amount of time. And he said that he was already ready to go on a small boat that was going to gather people and bring them to Russia. And he was going to talk about how he's going to come get us, and we're all going to go to Chutz. And it's a good thing that Hashem helped us that we didn't have to leave Eretz Yisrael, because afterwards, and also he said Hashem saved us because afterwards there was many riots there, and a lot of pogroms from Petlowitz. I don't know what that was, but probably wasn't such an easy time in Russia either. But anyway, they didn't have to leave Eretz Yisrael, so that's good. And afterwards, when the Gezerah took effect, I think he's talking about the Gezerah that everyone had to become like Turkish citizens. I think he said that everybody had to become Turkish citizens. Then it started becoming that people would be taken to the army, like we mentioned in previous videos. But since my father was a Rav of in Tzfat, so he had a Petor. He didn't have to go to the army. According to the laws of the Ottoman laws, which is Turkish, right? But still, all the different rabbis, all the different rabbanim, would have to go to Akko. That's where the office was to renew their Petor, to renew their exception from becoming in the army because they were a Rav. They also had to pay a lot of money in bribes. So we did a lot of tainus and tefillos, then bitzibor on all these tzaras. And my father also came back from Akko safely. We had great simcha, but there was still very, very bad famine and all these different types of things. And it was just really, really bad times, he says. So let's go, now he says in Perek Chavav, he says, let's go back and talk about my father again. He says that my father had the Beis Medrash Chabad in Tzfat. He was the Rav of the Beis Medrash Chabad in Tzfat. And there was also a chazan there. There was one chazan there and one shamash who would take care of the shul. And before we mentioned that if you were a chazan or if you were a shamash, they also didn't take you to the army. But then they changed the rules and they said that they also took shamashim and they also took chazanim. They also took our shamish, who was a Rabbi Shmuel, who happened to also be. He also had a garage in Tzfat for all the cars. He had he was basically like a mechanic. And they took him to the war in Beersheba, and he was saved, and he came back to his house, much later on. But he had a lot of big nisim. And also, even if you're a rabbi, there was a lot of tzaras, because not every Beis Medrash had the schus to have a petor, even the Rav from being in the army. And the Beis Medrashes that did have this schus, that did have this rule that they would be petor from the army, they would have to be signed up with the government with numbers, because every single Beis Medrash had a number. And they also had that every rabbi had to have these little notebooks, that they had like a certificate that they're a rabbi, and it was just a lot of rules and all these things. And the vad of the ear were the ones who were the ones who prepared these pinkasim, these tudot, and they actually did not like my father, he says. So they would give to businessmen Beis Medrashes so that they could become a rav, and it'd be patur from the army. So for them, they made this pinkas, the right way, and they wrote on it they were big rabbis and whatever. But my father, who happened to be a Rav Muvak Amiti for many years, and they wrote in his book a certain thing that if they would have seen his book, they would have taken him to the army right away. So basically, they did not like his father. But we had a great nace in this, because my uncle, who was my father's brother, Rabbi Beryl, who was the roikeach, he was the medicine man, because he also came one time to see these pinkasim, and this all took place in the house of Rav Alefandri, who was the Hakham Bashi in Tzfat at that time, because he was the one who had to sign on these pinkasim, and he was a great tzaddik, and he loved my father. And my uncle Beryl, he knew how to read Turkish and whatever they wrote, right? And he saw that they tricked my father and they wrote this bad thing that if they saw, they would be taken to the army. And it was a great tza'aka gedola, great screaming, like, oh boy, this isn't going to be good. So they did is that they ripped up all the pinkasim of all the rabbanim, and they said that all the time that they're not going to make for my father the right type of certificate, we're not going to let anybody have a pinkas. And then they decided, okay, fine, so we'll make it for his father also, and everything was okay. Okay, so that's pretty crazy also. My father sometimes would have to go hide in this Rav Alefandri's house, and the government wouldn't go look there because they were very, very scared of him. He says that he was the Hakham Bashi in Istanbul, and in Damascus. And when he was the Hakham Bashi in Damascus, Hakham Bashi probably means like the main guy. I'm not sure what it is. He actually was able to get the governor, I guess the Moshel HaGadol from Damascus, who was the Jamal Pasha Khatan. Whatever, he was doing all these things. Right, and we mentioned before that when he was the Chacham Bashi in Tzfat, the person, whatever, who was the representative of the Turkish government there, he wouldn't let him into his house because he didn't want to see the face of a Russia. Right, we mentioned before that the Gamal Pasha had to climb up a window to see him and everything like that. Fine. And this Rav Alefandri was a great tzaddik. He was very pashut yid, a goyin hador, ish emes, truthful man. He hated sheker. And there was many rabbanim in Tzfat who he did not let into his house as well, because he said that they're also, not doing the right thing. They're far from the emes. Except for my father, who was like a ben bias. He was always in his house. He was very, very precious to him, and all that. And also, Rabbi Shmuel Horowitz says that I would bring him meat from the shchitas of the Ashkenazim, because he did not want to eat the shchita of the Sephardim. He wanted to be machmar on himself like the Ashkenaz, because it's more chumrah, more stricter shchita, more stricter slaughtering. And the klal is that it's impossible to tell over all of his great tzidkis and all these things. He should have been in the doiros harishonim. And he was such a great tzaddik. And Rabbi Shmuel was just talking about all the different sheicha that was going on. That all these people in Nevada here, people would bribe them to get pinkasim and all these things. And Rabbi Alefandri said, "Don't bribe, whatever." Fine. And they would say, like, I guess people would, right? They would go to these different rabbanim and say, "Give us money and we'll protect you." And Rav Alefandri said, "Do not give a cent." And they said, and the Vada of the air, this government that was in place from the Turkeys, whatever it was, said that any time that the Rabbi Shaya Horowitz, all the time that Rabbi Shaya Horowitz, which is Rav Shmuel Horowitz's father, who we're talking about over here, is sitting in his house, we're not going to see any money. He's not going to let the sheker reign. He's not going to let it happen. So one day they came and they took all the different rabbanim and they threw them in jail, including my father. But they wanted money, or they didn't, whatever. There was just a lot going on. But my father has some good friends, and they were able to be mishtadel by one non-Jew over there, and also through my uncle Rabbi Beryl. That they at least helped my father not sit in the jail by all like these, bad criminals. He would sit in the Beis Hazovid. who was like, I guess, in the police station under their watch, so that they, nothing bad would happen to him. And he sat there in jail and he learned Mishnayos Baal Peh. And we went many places to try to free him and all these things, but didn't help. And these Chachamim that we mentioned before, who wanted to give money to be protected, once they saw that my father was in jail, so they're like, okay, fine, we're going to give money now. And they would sell their silver vessels from their Batei Midrashim, V'nasim HaKesef. And it was just not a good time. There was a lot of shaycha, there was a lot of sheker, there was a lot of stress, as you can see. But they also had to go to Akko. So even these rabbis that they wanted to, even these guys who paid shaycha, they still have to go to Akko to be mechadish to renew their pitor. And this was also an Inyan mamish of sakanas nefashis during the war. You could come in just in the middle of a battle, but everyone had to go. And I guess my father got freed. Hold on a second. I thought he was in jail. Okay, I don't really understand. There's a lot going on over here. But anyway, let's try to finish this because it's getting a little bit tedious with all these details over here. But it's good. This is why I'm reading it, because we want to know everything. And they worked it out that my father wouldn't have to go from the police station to Akko to get his pator. He could have his pator. And this was actually a very good thing because it was also the week before Pesach, and it was very, very rainy and cold and everything like that. And how could you go to Akko? Wouldn't you? Sometimes the journey back then could be more than a week to Akko from Tzfat, even though today it takes about 30 minutes. Back then it could take a week. We don't know if we'll be able to see them again. So when we heard that my father doesn't have to go, we had great simcha. But my father said, I'm not going to separate myself from the tzibor. And said, if everybody has to go, then I'm also going to go. and also especially because all these guys were not really rabbis, and I'm really the only true rabbi who's going to go with them. And maybe if they, at least if one real rabbi is going, so at least they'll have nechama and tikva and hope that everything will go well. Because even though they weren't true rabbis, his father obviously wanted to save them. They were Jews. Okay. And obviously everybody, we all cried once we heard this, because we were happy, now we were sad. And also my grandfather was geyser on him, but kivad av, that he shouldn't go, but this didn't work, and he went with them. And also my uncle Beryl had to go with them, and it's impossible to explain the tsaras and the sufferings that we had. And one day before Erev Pesach, they came back. It was mamish like Yitzias Mitzrayim. They came back with Tudot that they're pater from the Avodas Hatzava, and everything was because of my father. And now he tells the story. Ki ha'maisa hoyakach. So when they all came to Akko, they bumped into a legion of men that was going out to war, and they wanted to just send them. They wanted to just take them into battle with them. They just saw a bunch of rabbis walking. They're like, "Yeah, come to battle with us." But what does it make a difference? But my uncle Beryl, who was a friend of the Sofer Hamaskir Hagadol Shel Nemshel Ba'ako, he went with him on a tiyul, and he spoke with him, like, let's do this right. Let's be Mesader this Indian. Let's take care of this Indian of these certificates of the Rabbanim. And also he also gave him Kesef Sheichat. And he said that all these pinkasim are all mixed up, and it's a tircha gadol. We don't have time and everything like that. And Uncle Beryl said, "No, I'll do it." And he was misader everything. And he sat a few days until he was misader all the pinkasim. He made the tudot, They all came back, Baruch Hashem, Simcha Rabba, and we all had a great Pesach. Okay? I hope next week's video is going to be a little bit more exciting. This was a little bit intense with all these little details and the shaykhad and everything like that. But anyway, we got to keep going. We're going to read this whole book. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed.